the lights inside Madison Square Garden's theater burned bright, casting a glow over thousands of expectant fans as two very different fighters prepared to write another chapter in their careers. On one side stood Quinton Randall, the slick American challenger whose reputation was built on movement, intelligence, and patience rather than knockout power. On the other stood the undefeated Dominican sensation Rohan Polanco, a rising force carrying both momentum and expectations as the reigning WBO Intercontinental Welterweight champion. Before a single punch was thrown, the contrast between the two men was impossible to ignore. Randall entered the ring with experience, discipline, and a style designed to frustrate aggressive opponents. His record showed only a handful of knockouts, but those who understood boxing knew that power is only one weapon in the arsenal. Randall's real strength was making opponents miss, forcing mistakes, and turning fights into puzzles. Across from him was Polanco, unbeaten and surging toward bigger opportunities. With 10 knockouts already on his record, he carried the aura of a fighter who believed every round belonged to him. The Dominican champion had quickly become one of the most talked about prospects in the welterweight division, and this fight represented another important step on his journey toward world-level contention. As the opening bell echoed through the arena, the tension immediately became visible. Randall began exactly as many expected. He stayed long, worked behind his jab, and used every inch of the ring. His height and reach allowed him to operate from a distance, forcing Polanco to think before charging forward. The American looked calm, measured, and completely comfortable. Every movement seemed calculated. Every step carried purpose. But Polanco wasn't interested in fighting from the outside for long. The Dominican champion pressed forward with controlled aggression, searching for openings and studying Randall's rhythm. He stalked rather than rushed. Instead of recklessly attacking, he patiently cut distance and tested the challenger's defenses. The first meaningful exchanges revealed something important. While Randall was skilled at controlling range, Polanco possessed surprising physical strength. Whenever the fighters came together, the champion showed he could push Randall backward and impose himself on the inside. It was a subtle advantage, but one that would become increasingly important as the fight progressed. Then came the first moments that energized the crowd. Polanco connected with a sharp combination that included a double left hook. Randall tried to dismiss the impact, shaking his head as if to say the punches had no effect. Yet almost instantly another right hand from Polanco found its target. The message was clear. Even when the shots weren't landing perfectly clean, the champion was finding ways to touch his opponent. Round after round, Polanco continued applying pressure. He targeted the body with determination, recognizing an opening created by Randall's stance. While the American's defensive positioning reduced the available target upstairs, it exposed sections of his body. Polanco began exploiting that weakness. Hard shots slammed into Randall's ribs and flank, forcing him to think about more than just defending his head. The body attack became one of the defining themes of the contest. Every time Randall settled into a rhythm, Polanco answered with another digging punch downstairs. The champion wasn't simply looking for immediate damage. He was investing. He was laying foundations for later rounds, hoping to drain energy and slow the movement that made Randall dangerous. Yet the challenger refused to fold. What made Randall so difficult was his discipline. Whenever Polanco seemed ready to trap him, Randall found an escape route. He slid away from pressure, rolled with punches, and used subtle defensive movements that often went unnoticed by casual viewers. While the crowd naturally reacted to Polanco's aggression, boxing purists could appreciate the technical skill Randall displayed throughout the fight. Still, momentum slowly began shifting toward the undefeated champion. Midway through the contest, Polanco produced some of his most impressive work. A series of combinations pushed Randall backward toward the ropes, where the challenger suddenly found himself fighting in uncomfortable territory. This was exactly where Polanco wanted the action. The Dominican unleashed bursts of offense, mixing body shots with hooks and straight punches. He varied the tempo beautifully, flashing the jab before changing angles and sneaking in unexpected punches. One particularly sharp left hook landed after a jab feint, catching Randall's attention and drawing a reaction from the crowd. For a brief period, it looked as though the champion might finally break through. The pressure was relentless. Every time Randall attempted to reset, Polanco was there. Every time the challenger looked ready to establish distance, Polanco closed the gap once again. The undefeated champion was beginning to dictate where the fight took place, and that represented a significant victory in itself. But Randall wasn't finished. As the rounds continued, the American challenger began making subtle adjustments. Rather than allowing Polanco to dictate everything, he started finding opportunities for counters. His timing improved. His confidence grew. Most importantly, he discovered success with the right hand. Again and again, Randall found moments to catch Polanco as he advanced. The shots weren't devastating, but they were clean. They were accurate, and they served as a reminder that boxing is often about precision rather than power. Several times, Randall stopped Polanco in his tracks with perfectly timed counters. The champion's aggression occasionally left openings, and the challenger was intelligent enough to exploit them. As the fight entered its later stages, those moments became more frequent. The commentators noted it as well. Polanco was still winning exchanges overall, but he was no longer solving the puzzle as easily. Randall's movement, defensive awareness, and growing confidence were creating new problems. The challenger was showing why experienced, crafty fighters can be so frustrating, even when facing younger and more explosive opponents. By the 8th and 9th rounds, the battle had evolved into something fascinating. Polanco remained the aggressor, continuing his body attack and pushing the pace. Yet Randall was no longer simply surviving. He was actively competing. His right hand repeatedly found a home, and his defensive tricks forced Polanco into occasional mistake. The undefeated champion had entered the fight looking like a rising star. Now he was receiving an education as well. This wasn't merely a showcase. This was a test, a lesson, an opportunity to learn what happens when talent collides with experience. To his credit, Polanco never abandoned his strategy. Even when Randall enjoyed success, the Dominican kept returning to the body. He understood that those punches mattered. He understood that investments made early often pay dividends late. The accumulation became visible. Red marks appeared on Randall's body. The constant pressure forced him to work every second of every round. While the challenger's toughness deserved praise, Polanco's persistence was equally impressive. As the fight entered the final round, both men knew the outcome was likely leaning toward the champion. Still, Randall fought with urgency. He continued throwing combinations and searching for opportunities. There was a sense that if he had shown this level of offensive ambition earlier in the contest, the fight might have looked very different. His success in the closing stages highlighted both his skill and the frustration of what could have been. Yet Polanco answered every challenge. Whenever Randall found momentum, the champion responded with body shots, pressure, and combinations of his own. The Dominican never allowed the challenger to fully seize control. Even when absorbing clean right hands, he remained composed and continued marching forward. The final bell finally arrived after 10 competitive rounds. There was no knockout, no dramatic knockdown, no last-second miracle. Instead, the crowd witnessed something many boxing fans appreciate just as much: a high-level technical battle between two skilled professionals. Both fighters had moments worth celebrating. Randall demonstrated why movement, intelligence, and defensive awareness remain essential weapons in boxing. He survived heavy pressure, created difficult angles, and landed enough clean counters to earn respect. Polanco, meanwhile, showed why so many believe he has a bright future. He displayed patience, strength, versatility, and maturity. Rather than becoming reckless against a difficult opponent, he stayed focused on the task at hand and systematically built his victory over 10 rounds. When the scorecards were read, the judges left little doubt. Scores of 97-93, 100-90, and 99-91 all favored the defending champion. The announcement confirmed what most observers had seen. Rohan Polanco remained undefeated. The Dominican star improved his record to 17-0 and successfully defended his WBO Intercontinental Welterweight Championship. More importantly, he gained valuable experience against a style that could trouble many young contenders. For Polanco, this was more than another win. It was proof that he could handle adversity. Proof that he could remain composed when an opponent refused to cooperate with the script. Proof that he could solve problems over 10 rounds rather than relying solely on power or athleticism. As he stood victorious beneath the bright lights of Madison Square Garden, it felt as though another door had opened in his career.